And greetings. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand right here on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre. And of course, all of you, let us know what you think about what we think. Steve@stevedeace.com is the email address. DEACE is the last name. That's how you spell it. You can also look us up on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. And look for Steve Deace as well on MeWe, Gab, and Parler if you prefer more free speech. You can also go to youtube.com/Steve Deace. But as we warned you, often you're no longer going to be able to get after production tape delayed full episodes anymore because we're just tired of dealing with the YouTube censors. Apparently, they think they even know more about COVID than the governor of the largest state of the best large state success story, as well as an expert panel of people from Stanford, Harvard, and Oxford. They apparently know even more than those people do. I'm not dealing with those things anymore. I don't care. I don't make enough money off of it to deal with it. And frankly, there wouldn't be an amount of money they could offer me that would cause me to deal with it anyway. So we're just not putting those things in the show anymore. So that's why you want to subscribe at blazetv.com/Deace so that you don't have to worry about big tech censorship. You can also give us a shot at rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. They still seem to believe in free speech over there. Also, you guys still seem to believe in our book, Fauci and Bargan, the most powerful and dangerous bureaucrat in American history. We crossed on Tuesday, which was the 1-week anniversary of its release. We went over 50,000 print copies of this book sold in a week. Yesterday, we hit number 4 on USA Today's best sellers list. That's of every book, every genre. And it's the highest our publisher, Post Hill Press, has ever had a book on that list. The audio version also debuted last night, read by our very own Aaron McIntyre. So we've gotten a ton of questions about, hey, when's the audio version out? That is out now. So again, we cannot thank all of you enough for the smash success of this book. I've got a lot of friends in the last few days I wasn't aware I had, or people that I didn't think were friends and now kind of suddenly are. A newfound respect. Yes, indeed. It's the old JFK line that victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan, right? We've experienced a little bit of that around here, but that's okay. I mean, and we appreciate that and all of you. We're well over 700 reviews to the book already as well. Again, all in just over a week of release. We just are blown away by the success of the book. We thought it was going to be the most successful book we've ever written, but this is going to be, folks. My publisher tells me there's less than 100 books a year that will sell, and that includes classics, everything, new releases, classics, everything. There's less than 100 books a year that will sell 50,000 copies, and we did that in a week. I don't even know what to say. These numbers are just like so far beyond me. I was given some names of some people with some fairly big platforms who we have outsold already with this book. I won't share their names because we'd actually like to get on their platforms, talk about the book so we can sell more to get the message out. But we are walking in some, as arguably the greatest country music band of all time, Alabama once sang. We are walking in some high cotton right now. All right. And we can't thank all of you for that enough. So thank you. And the audio version is now out. All right. What's on the audio version of today's program? At the bottom of the hour, a couple of days ago, we played for you a Grassroots ad out of Tennessee where people, our theme this year is The Answer Is Us. So just a grassroots group of people raising the money to run an ad. Enough with the masks, enough of the useless Chinese face diapers. They're going after their governor now, their Republican governor, for going weak in the knees on that. We're going to talk to an individual about that effort, and maybe that's something you can emulate. A group of you can emulate in your state. We'll get into that here at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, I'm looking forward to our Theology Thursday. I look forward to it every week But it's one of our most popular segments each week. But this week we have a question from a listener / viewer. And I always say that because I don't know who, is watching on BlazeTV or just listening to the pod. I don't know if I've gotten this question before. Normally people say, I don't want to believe that Christianity is true. And here are my objections to it. Right?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's rare that someone comes to us and says, I want to believe this is true, and I still do not. That is not typical of the typical evangelism paradigm that we face from individuals or a culture at large. But I thought this was such a unique challenge that we would be remiss if we didn't take it up. So we're going to do that next hour for Theology Thursday. And then Aaron will be here with 3 non-political questions. Did you remember?
Plead the fifth, Your Honor.
Yeah. Well, now he knows. But he did remember what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Words Don't Have Meaning. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand tweets, paid leave is infrastructure, child care is infrastructure, caregiving is infrastructure. Yes, infrastructure is the word du jour, and nobody seems to know what it means, as Democrats, along with the White House, attempt to pass a massive tax hike to fund a infrastructure bill that would be loaded with all sorts of social programs. Maybe Joe Biden can shed some light on what infrastructure means to him.
To automatically say that the only thing that's infrastructure is a highway, a bridge, or whatever, that's just not rational. I think the vast majority of Americans think everything from the sewer pipes to the sewer facilities to the water pipes, I think they're infrastructure.
On the topic of not knowing definitions, here's White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki on religious liberty.
What does the president, who we know is Catholic, say to Catholic doctors, Catholic institutions who are fearful that if the Equality Act passes, it has the potential to trample on their conscience rights? What does the president say to those people who are concerned about that?
He has a difference of opinion, and he respects their difference of opinion, but he has been a supporter of the Equality Act, and he also is a practicing Catholic and attends church nearly every week.
Learning Spanish today, today's phrase is anti-religious bigotry is infrastructure.
El fanatismo antirreligioso es infraestructura.
A new Gallup poll finds near record lows of party identification for both Republicans and Democrats. 25% of respondents now identify solely as Republicans. The lowest ever recorded by Gallup is 22% back in 2013. Only 30% of respondents now identify solely as Democrats. That's about at the level it's been for the last 8 years, with a low of 29% in 2013 as well. You remember last week when we told you about that pastor in Alberta, Canada, who was jailed for over a month and then released for failing to obey capacity limitations at his church. After the pastor was released, as you know, he showed up to preach the very next Sunday, drawing a packed crowd once again at Grace Life Church outside Edmonton. It seemed like a fairly triumphant end to yet another startling story of COVID fascism. In case you thought the spirit of the age was just going to take their ball and go home, we have our answer. No. Yesterday, police forces in Edmonton arrived at the church and set up 2 layers of security fencing to block entrance into the church. Alberta Health Services say they've physically closed the church and is going to prevent access until the church can, quote, demonstrate the ability to comply with Alberta's Chief Medical Officer of Health's restrictions, end quote. Meanwhile, also in Canada, an undated video surfaced recently depicting a crowd in a bustling restaurant in Vancouver driving health ministers out of the establishment who were there to enforce COVID restrictions.
Get out! 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 Get out!
A track coach in New Hampshire says he was fired for not enforcing mask rules. Pembroke Academy track and field coach Bradley Keyes was fired after posting a letter to his blog that read, quote, "I will not put kids on the track and tell them to run any races while wearing a mask." He called the mask mandate senseless and dared the school to fire him, which they did.
I just think people haven't pushed back, and I decided it was time to push back. Masks restrict breathing. There's no question about it, especially think about running full speed. The wind is in your face. It's shoving the mask back into your nose and your mouth.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is back in the headlines. In the middle of March, he hosted a retrospective roundtable with Stanford public health scholar Scott Atlas, Oxford's Sunetra Gupta, Stanford's Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, and Harvard's Dr. Martin Koldorf on the dangers of lockdown and what made Florida a success story in dealing with the virus. Yesterday, with no warning, YouTube removed all traces of the roundtable from its platform with no explanation why. On the matter of the recent 60 Minutes hit piece, DeSantis held a press conference yesterday debunking the narrative that he engaged in a pay-to-play scheme on vaccine distribution with the grocery store Publix.
Even the dimmest bulb in the New York corporate media constellation would have been able to realize that was false. You literally take 10 minutes to make a few phone calls. 60 Minutes was in Florida for 3 months trying to dig up dirt. And the best they could come up with is a half-baked conspiracy theory that literally is readily debunked by talking to like 2 people. So I think that means we probably did a pretty good job.
And now this from Newsweek. Can blood from young people slow aging? Silicon Valley has bet billions at will. Biotech startups are trying to hack the process of aging and, in the process, stave off the most devastating diseases. And finally, the hard bigotry of low expectations. This video by Ami Horowitz is from 2016, but it seems appropriate now.
Do you have an opinion on voter ID laws?
Yeah, they're usually pretty racist. I think voter ID laws are a way to perpetuate racism.
Would you go as far as say those laws are racist?
For sure.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely, because they're less likely to have state IDs.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No.
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID, so we know what we need to carry around.
Everybody that I know have ID. That's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with.
And that's what happened while we were away.
I had never seen that before, and it's one of the most racist things I've ever seen in my life.
Did you catch that kid that said those type of people?
Yeah, those types of people. They couldn't be expected to know how to get an ID. They don't have DMVs in their neighborhoods. They don't have cars.
Your average college coed is starting to make the Jehovah's Witnesses look like a bunch of freewheeling spirits.
Aaron's montage. You need to pour one out after watching that. Luckily, our friends over at Bonner Private Wine or Patriot Wine, they can help you out. They are down in Argentina, where they make the best really dark red wine from Malbec grapes that are grown at 9,000 feet. They've lab tested these wines. They contain up to 10 times the levels of longevity and heart health with a nutrient called resveratrol that you're looking for. That's powerful stuff. It pops up again and again in studies on longevity, heart health, brain health. Also, these wines come with 90% less sugar, fewer chemicals, fewer additives. If you love steak, barbecuing this time of year, a red wine goes perfect, helps with not just the taste, but the digestion of red meat too. And the taste of these wines, we've all tried them. They're really good. Notes of blackberry, leather, cherry, smoke. Today, right now, the guys at PatriotWine2021.com, they're giving you 50% off their best Malbecs. That's 50% off of shipping too. So 50% off the wine, 50% off of shipping too, 50% off the whole thing. Get top class imported wine, 50% off, including the shipping right now. And wine makes a great gift, even a great gift for yourself at PatriotWine2021.com. That's PatriotWine2021.com. All right, later today in the overtime, which we are going to record after today's program for Blaze TV subscribers, our friends over at the Daily Wire have commissioned a professional poll on Major League Baseball's moving of the All-Star Game out of Georgia, and also thoughts about politicizing sports and woke corporations in general. We're going to go over some of the data that's in that professional poll conducted by the Daily Wire. That's coming up in our overtime today. If you're a subscriber, we're going to record that for you right after today's program, and you'll be able to watch it at blazetv.com/Deace once it gets uploaded. For the rest of you, to make sure you don't miss it, you also can go to blazetv.com/Deace, become a subscriber today with a discount at blazetv.com/Deace. So one of the things we love to do for you, and I have done this with our show from the very beginning. And I did this, when I was a sports talk radio host too. I always thought, I came from a fan world when I got into talk radio. I never went to college for communications. I'd never worked in any professional capacity whatsoever until I was made co-host of a sports talk radio show. And so, I walked right in here. I worked as a Cubs sports reporter at the local newspaper, but I walked right in here. But that wasn't an opinion business. That was covering events, reporting. You guys remember what that was, right? When we used to just report on things? Vaguely, yeah. You ever see anything like that in your lifetime, Aaron? Can you remember reporting?
Do the what now?
Exactly. That's before you were born. But when I got into the opinion business in radio, I'd never done any radio. I'd not been professionalized. And so I came to this with a fan's perspective. And I always thought, hey, what do fans want to hear, talk about, And so that's what we did. And we ended up doing things that were considered kind of quirky or innovative at the time, that ended up being big hits with audiences because I thought like a fan. And I took that attitude with me when I made the transition into news talk. If you guys could sit at the press conferences we get to, if you could get the guest we get, what questions would you want the answers to? What topics would you like us to address? And one of the ways we've tried to help you with that is by connecting dots for you, letting you, through us, learn some things about the political process that are often hidden from you. That's why I do some of the deep dives on polling that I do. One of the things I talked about in my previous book, Truth Bombs, is the system is devised so that you right-wingers don't really understand truly the power you have over the system. Now, we have diminished in numbers from the 1980s. We're still one of the most, if not the most potent in terms of volume and energy voting bloc in the country on either side. And I'm going to prove it to you again here in just a minute. I'm going to connect these dots for you. So I first heard about the Gallup poll, Aaron, that you mentioned in your montage, from Chris Siliza over at CNN, who's a complete and total hack. But he works for CNN, so I apologize for the redundancy. I have repeated myself, okay? And he points out, boy, this is really dangerous, he said. Really dangerous. Near record low of people identify as Republicans. Now, since it's CNN, he left out the part where a near record low of people also identify as Democrats. Okay, I've not been a registered Republican for 5 years. Before that, I had spent 8 years as a registered Republican, just because I got sick of re-registering every year at the Iowa caucus process. And then before that, I spent a good 5 years again as a registered independent. On a macro national level, the Republican Party is worthless at best. Enablers and collaborators to the spirit of the age at worst. And it's actually very encouraging polling news that record low amounts of Americans want to belong and be identified with either one of these parties, because both of these parties on a national level hate the American people. So it seems like we're finally kind of getting that message here a little bit, right?
You're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working now. we got Russell Brand on our side on vaccine passports. I'm watching Naomi Wolf, was who I found out about what happened to the church in Canada that you had in your thing when she tweeted about it last night. I mean, Bill Maher going after wokeism. I mean, dude, I'm just going to go where the food is. If we agree, man, we're on the same team. You know what I'm saying? You can take your parties and your labels. They all suck and they hate us anyway. And bury them in a hole and throw away the hole, as far as I'm concerned. Send them right into the sun, right at noon. All right? Viking funeral style, and then film it, and then it will get banned by YouTube. But you brought up an interesting little anecdote, Aaron. You know, so Chris is talking about over there at CNN, this is really dangerous for Republicans. Aaron, in your montage, I'm going to connect some dots for you guys here. Okay, you ready for this? Prepare for your mind to be blown. Aaron, in your montage, you mentioned, what year was it that was the lowest amount of people that had been identified as Republicans in the Gallup poll since which year was it?
2013.
2013. Lowest amount of people that had identified themselves as Republicans in the Gallup poll since 2013. What happened in 2014?
At a midterm election?
There was a midterm election in 2014. Not just any midterm election, mind you. Republicans had, I believe it was the second or third greatest one-party swing of Senate seats in a midterm election since Reconstruction. It was a 9-seat swing. A 9-seat swing. Stop and think about it. Nearly 10% of the United States Senate turned over in one election, in one midterm. Nearly 10%, 9-seat swing. Republicans went from down 4 seats to up 5. A 9-seat swing. And it was the election after the Gallup poll had shown, and by the way, I buy that polling. Gallup's party identification polling is some of the best, most accurate polling in the country. But it's a poll. It's not an analysis, right? It's a poll. It's not an analysis. It tells you what the numbers are. Doesn't tell you what the numbers mean. In fact, Gallup actually got out of primary polling about 10 years ago because they no longer trusted that they could do an accurate sampling because primary elections are so volatile. Gallup's one of the last honest ones, truly, brutally honest ones left. It was actually a Gallup pollster who wrote a column about 10 years ago pointing out how the Obama administration had jerry-rigged the unemployment formula so we couldn't trust it anymore. So, I mean, Gallup is the granddaddy here, to borrow the Rose Bowl term. They're the granddaddy of all pollsters. They're one of the few ones that have actually, over the years, going back, half a century or more, have attempted to do like real work. So the last time Republicans had numbers this low, they had a historic swing of Senate seats in a midterm election. Do you think Chris Silla's over at CNN knows that? Or does it even matter? Because he's a propagandist. But here's why it matters to you. Here's why it matters to you. Those growing numbers of independents. Now, with Democrats declining as well, there's a growing number of left-leaning independents too, correct? Sure. But the last time we saw Republicans this low, they then turned around and won a stunning midterm election victory, which tells you, this kind of goes back to the COVID debate in the past year. Do you want my study without a control group? Do you want my study, or do we want real-time data? Remember that interview that CNN hack did with Harvey Risch over at Yale about hydroxychloroquine about a year ago? Well, we have studies, and he's like, dude, I've treated like 1,000 patients and given them this drug. What are you talking about? You've got studies. I've got the damn case files. Remember the doctors in California who own the walk-in clinics who got banned? Yeah. All right. How many patients? They're like, we have receipts. You have studies with no control group. So it's not a study, really. It's not a study. Maybe a lot of things, but a study it wouldn't be. but we have case files, patient files, and we're giving patients this drug. It's working, and they're not suing us. Okay, does that matter at all? No. Okay,
it's the transgenderism of medicine. See, that's a boy and that's a girl. No,
yes.
We got to study this.
Yes. And by the way, if you get Fauci and Bargan, we give you a more detailed biography of Harvey Risch. Guys, I mean, this guy's, he's
up in the league with Didier Riot.
Yes, he's got an arm's length of accreditations and commendations, okay? Now, maybe he did just get suddenly dumb. We've seen that with people, right? Sometimes they do get suddenly dumb, but don't you think he would have gotten his suit off by now if hydroxychloroquine was a dangerous drug and he's out there giving it to hundreds, if not thousands of patients? Of course he would have. It'd be a class action lawsuit quicker than you can say Deshaun Watson on Harvey Risch right now, all right? So here's your study. I have the results. So we can do a study. Who are the independents? Who's the majority of this booming segment of people that now want to be identified as independents? We could do a study, we could, right? Or we could have the real-time results. So the last time Republicans had this low of number in 2013, they turned around a year later and swung 9 seats in the United States Senate. So again, you can show me your study. Let's just treat the patient. We got the case file here. Who are the majority of these people that are now using the identity of independent? Who are the majority of them? People like you and I. People like you and I. We don't need studies when we have results. You do studies when you're not sure what the results are, or you're concerned about taking an action and you're concerned about what the results may be. So you study it before you commit the action, right? You're worried about collateral damage, failure, what the cost of that will be. But once we have real-time results, we don't need any more studies. There's a reason why your CDC still keeps presenting to you mask studies when they're not presenting to you mask examples, because there aren't any. There's not a single example on planet Earth. Come at me. Every media outlet, all your accreditations, come at me with every last one of them. Nowhere on planet Earth can you find a data point that masks work. Nowhere. It doesn't exist. And I think that Gallup poll, because we know what it means, because we have results that show us what it means, I think we should all be greatly encouraged by that. It goes into the conversation we had yesterday about how Tucker Carlson has helped to change the environment. I pointed out a pro-family group that has been notoriously gutless for years. Won't name them, but they're gutless. Came out and started clubbing Asa Hutchinson yesterday after his interview on Tucker Carlson's show. What this is showing is the environment here is changing. Now, my fear is it's too late. My hope is I think it's too late because I've been trying to get this environment to change for the last 10 years. And so it just seems like it's too late to me because I've been singing this song for how long, right? Congresswoman Lauren Boebert tweeted out yesterday, we have just basically the last few decades handed every culture war issue over to the Democrats and said, hey, to the left, this isn't the hill to die on. And now we're left without any hills to die on. Dude, who does that sound like? You've been listening to me for a long time. How many times have I said stuff like that?
Oh, yeah, I agree.
So maybe it isn't too late. That's possible. I may be wrong. That it just seems like it's too late to me because I've just been saying this for so long and I'm discouraged that it's taken us this long to get this point. So maybe it's not too late. Maybe the timing is just right. We're going to find out though now because I think we've gotten the point here. Finally, I think we have figured this thing out. You have any thoughts?
Well, I was just going to say, you're right to be skeptical. You've seen a lot of mirages in the time you've been doing this. But Boebert is absolutely one of us. And that exact language, maybe she's watching the show because that's what we've been using. You don't really get to choose the hills to die on anymore. The hills have chosen you. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Mm-hmm. And that defines your political reality. Otherwise, get out of the way.
Case in point, we'll have an example for you when we come back here in a moment. A grassroots group in Tennessee put up a great ad last week on the complete agitprop propaganda of masks. Now they're taking it to the next step with their latest ad. We'll show that to you and talk to one of its organizers next. If you've got some chronic aches and pains, not injury. If you've got an injury, go get, obviously, professional medical help. But if you've got stuff of the chronic variety, could be the knee, the neck, crink in the neck, the shoulder. For me, it's the left hip flexor. Which one of those might be you, the underlying cause is likely inflammation, and you got to defeat that inflammation before it can cause even permanent damage. And a lot of us will use those pain relievers or topical rubs to get us through a moment, and there's a reason those sell so much, because they work, but it's how they work that's the issue. They work in masking the symptoms. They don't actually, the pain, they don't actually deal with the cause. And that's why you want a product like our friends over at Omega XL, backed by 35 years of clinical research. Omega XL will attack the inflammation that is the cause, likely, of your soreness, aches, and pains. And right now, if you want to give it a shot, you can get started with buy one bottle and get a second one for free at omegaxl.com/Steve. Again, that's omegaxl.com/Steve, or give them a call, 800-844-4888. That's 800-844-4888. Well, a few days ago, we showed you an ad we absolutely loved by a grassroots group out of Tennessee, taking on the dumbassery of the useless Chinese face diaper. And now they're back for a more serious conversation, because they're taking on the weakness of their own Republican governor in a new ad. Watch this.
Governor Bill Lee asked me to be in this commercial and use my voice as well as exploit my illness. Along with using me, he's using your tax dollars to make this propaganda, to scare you so you keep obeying. See, I love wearing this mask. Out of my dirty jean pocket, then onto my face. It's easy to comply. Comply, because we told you to.
A member of that grassroots organization out of Tennessee joins us now as part of our theme this year. The answer is us. They have taken the battle into their own hands. Gary Hamble, it's good to have you with us on the show, brother. How are you?
Hi, Steve. I'm great. It's great to be with you, man. Hey, congrats on your book. I look forward to getting my copy.
Thank you. There is some outstanding data down there that you could rub your governor's nose in it. There's a whole chapter devoted to the masquerade. So tell us a little bit about you and your organization, first of all, and how you guys kind of put this effort together. And is this something that can be emulated from others in our audience around the country?
I hope so. That's the goal. I mean, look, we're just a group of citizens that got together and decided that it was time to stand. We had enough. And so it started out back in August of last year. We filed a lawsuit against Governor Bill Lee, essentially attacking the constitutionality of our emergency power statute, which in Tennessee is incredibly broad, gives him the power to issue executive orders with the force of law. Also allows him to delegate powers, the statute says, as he deems prudent, pretty wide and vague. And our governor can continue to renew this emergency without any checks from our legislature. So we filed that lawsuit, continued that by filing a lawsuit against our county mayor and our county school system, and then began writing bills trying to champion some constitutional legislation, which is not going so well right now in our General Assembly. And now we're making ads and doing all sorts of stuff, trying to win hearts and minds. We're going to be forming a PAC, getting very, very active in 2022 here at the local level. And so we're just a grassroots organization raising a little bit of hell, I guess, in Tennessee.
What I love about this, too, is just to kind of set the scene of the backdrop of all of this. The award-winning sports writer Jason Whitlock made a big announcement about a year or so ago. He was moving out of L.A., where he had lived for many years. He moved to Nashville. The Daily Wire earlier this year relocated its offices from California, from Southern California to Tennessee, to Nashville. I heard last week we're actually opening up here at the BlazeTV. We're opening up a facility in your home state as well. All right. And so what I love about this, and I've talked about this before on the program, is, we have a very unique, robust grassroots organizational presence in Iowa that it took many, many years to cultivate and build. And now it's kind of taken off on its own to the point that our own governor, who I would, as someone who's covered the COVID story on a national basis as much as anyone in the last year, I mean, if I was going to rank Kim Reynolds' performance with COVID, she'd be in the top 2 or 3 in the United States. And yet, despite that, she shows up for work at the Capitol Rotunda here in Des Moines on the very first day of the legislative session, and she's got a couple of 100 of her own voters, basically, burning their masks in the Capitol Rotunda, demanding to breathe the free air again in the dead of the Iowa winter. And it's that kind of an environment, though, that keeps someone that's even done as good a job as a Kim Reynolds on her toes. To a reminder, hey, we're not going anywhere, and we still, you haven't finished the job here. Now, I wouldn't put your governor in her class whatsoever, but your state, though, is a place where people are fleeing to get away from COVID stand around the country. And yet I love the fact that you guys are like, and that's precisely why we shouldn't be wearing these dumb Chinese face diapers. You know they don't work. We know they don't work. You know that we know they don't work. And yet you keep telling us to put them on anyway. Any thoughts on that, Gary?
Well, yeah, look, I mean, I think at the end of the day, this is where people are longing for freedom. I think people are tired. They're disgusted. They're done with it. And, to your point regarding our governor, relatively speaking, I think this is the crux of the issue for me. Relatively speaking, he did what a lot of other governors did. So it's not that he's one of the worst ones out there. My point is, I don't care what he did relative to someone else. I want our governor to obey our Constitution. And I want our legislature to function in the way that it's supposed to in checking those powers. And I'm not a fan of my governor spending my taxpayer dollars creating propaganda telling me, number one, that I need to wear a mask, and number two, that I need to take a safe and effective vaccine. How do you know this stuff? This isn't something that should be coming from an elected official. These are decisions we should be making personally with our physicians. So I'm kind of over it, but we're still perpetuating this stuff here in Tennessee on a regular basis. And again, to your other point, we've got folks coming in here from all over the country, and I'm meeting a lot of them. They're coming to our rallies and they're saying, Gary, I'm so glad you're doing this because I don't think you people realize how close you are to the crap that we just left. Y'all got to stop doing this stuff here. Because they see it. They've been here before when you lose liberty slowly over time, so that's my thoughts on that.
So somebody that's listening right now, Idaho, I'm going to South Dakota to speak later this month, but that state has obviously been one of the most open states under Kristi Noem for the past year. So maybe a state like Ohio, for example, whose Republican governor Mike DeWine is just lost in love with COVID. I mean, he's singing Air Supply karaoke to COVID-19. He can't get enough of it, okay? So if I live in a state like that, where the culture of the state, the governor of the state ought to know better, which is probably the argument you would make about your state of Tennessee. So I'm in a state like that. I'm in a state like West Virginia, where the last 3 presidential elections, Democrats didn't just not win a county, Gary. They didn't win a precinct in the whole state. Okay. I'm in one of those kinds of states, and I've got a COVID stand governor. Can you give them some pointers about how you guys got this off the ground in Tennessee, that this could be emulated in some other places around the country?
Yeah, it's important to get active. I mean, we got loud and vocal really, really quick. One of the keys that we work with at Tennessee Stands in terms of being active, if you talk to a lot of activists or lobbyists, it's all about, building relationships and building relationships. And one day, if you build enough relationships over the next 2 or 3 years, well, you might just get something from a legislature. They might just give you a little nugget. And my thing is, we don't have time for that stuff anymore. And so we've sort of taken the approach that it's not necessarily asking permission or trying to build the relationship, though it's not that we're against relationships, but we're in the mode of holding our elected officials accountable to the oath that they swore to secure our liberty. So It's a matter of being very vocal. We're showing up locally. So that's another big thing. We have a group, one of our groups in Knoxville, actually. It took them about 6 to 8 months to do this. They showed up week after week after week at their local county commission meeting, petitioning their county commission to dissolve their local board of health, which in their county was the entity responsible for all of the mandates. It's interesting here in Tennessee, our governor hasn't made a state mandate, but he's delegated this authority to all of the local tyrants in Nashville, in Memphis, in Chattanooga, and Knoxville, who are still to this day limiting businesses, curfews, mask mandates, so on and so forth. So they took it locally to their county commission. And I want to say 2 weeks ago, the county commission finally took the second reading and passed an ordinance to remove authority from their county board of health. It took them being allowed. It took persistence. It took them going there every week. They would show up literally 400 people, and they'd talk in public forum for like 4 hours and just wear these people out. So you hate to do that. I mean, people are busy. We live busy lives, but it takes.
It's going to take that level of persistence.
Getting active locally is the key.
Yeah, we are all busy, but it's going to, for everything there is a time and a season. And in other times and seasons, we got to do this level of activism and civic engagement on a seasonal basis, an election year, or at the end of an election, or in a primary cycle. But we're at a time and a season right now where we're frankly not afforded that luxury, that we're going to have to make this a more full-time, persistent pursuit in order for it to be successful, given the gravity of the moment. Last thing I want to ask you, if you guys, and maybe you're already doing this, but taking this to the next level, which is 30, 40 of us are all going shopping together at Walmart. None of us wearing a mask. They ain't throwing us all out. And we're filming the whole thing. That level of corporate civil disobedience, is that anywhere on your radar? Because I think ultimately it's going to take that level of action. And people respect strength even when it comes from terrible sources, history shows. There's a lot of other people who love to take their masks off inside those places because they know they don't work. They're just afraid to. They see a show of force like that, suddenly the triple braided cord becomes tougher to break. What are your thoughts?
That is a very Tennessee stands-ish move that we would make, and I think I think there are some things like that coming. I think for a lot of people, as frustrated as they've been with the mask mandates, what I see coming is a much broader frustration with the requirements or potential requirements of the use of vaccine passports. And I think that issue is what's going to be able to draw en masse some really large protests and civil disobedience, because as you saw in Florida, DeSantis has really begun to tackle this issue. And he not only restricted the Florida government from requiring vaccine passports, but he restricted businesses themselves from making a mandate. We haven't done that in Tennessee. Our governor has taken the stance that, private business can do whatever they want, that whole argument. And so we're going to see vaccine passports here in Tennessee. It's coming. It's coming like a freight train. You're going to have to use them to get into the Titans game, the Nashville Predators games, and everywhere else, possibly eventually the grocery store. Who knows where this is going to go? But I think that's going to be the key issue, where civil disobedience now is not a choice. It's a duty at that point.
Gary, is there a website or anything you want to direct people to? And if there's folks in other states listening, watching right now, and they want to take a look at what you guys have done and see if it might be a model for them, what would you recommend?
Yeah, TennesseeStands.org, TennesseeStands.org. Please follow us, or you can find us on any bit of social media at Tennessee Stands. Subscribe to our email list, and certainly would love to connect and see what we can do to get this movement started around the country. All right, good to see you, Gary. Thanks for joining us, brother. Take care. Brother. All right, bye-bye. Any thoughts on our conversation there with Gary from Tennessee Stands?
Really, really appreciate what he talked about with the seat at the table type of
the access-based
politics. I appreciate his reasoning, because primarily right now, he's absolutely right. We don't have time for that. But if you take a step back and look at maybe the big picture, the seat at the table, access-based politics model that the conservative movement, by and large, for my entire lifetime, and most of you guys' lifetimes, listening and watching as well, that type of approach, if you think about it, is really fundamentally rejecting the principle of self-government.
Mm-hmm.
It fundamentally rejects that principle. Because you know what? In a self-governing republic, you and I, we the people, have a seat at the table. Why? Well, one, it's in the Constitution. But two, we paid for the table. We paid for the seat as well. So yeah, you're damn right. We're going to come and sit down at the table because this is our table. So I really appreciate that as well. And I think that's part of kind of what I was talking about yesterday too. Reframing how we think about political activism and engagement in this time. We don't have time. And so you have to take actions like this and take back what's rightfully yours.
Yeah, and going forward, it's really important to remember that the success of organizations like this ultimately are truly there by establishing a framework that is permanent beyond a moment. We're going to try to rush this thing to return back to normal. Again, we are generationally in a 40 years in the desert. I think the rest of most of my life, and Steve's life at the very least, is going to be about trying to get back to normal. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And that's the level of force that needs to be. We're not going away. We are in this for the long haul. You can't outlast us. You can't possibly hope to. The terms he used, we're going to exhaust you. I loved that. Because way too many people think that a nice phrase here and there, just agree to if meet in the middle sort of thing. No, this guy gets it. Follow him.
There's, I've been debating the notion of access-based activism versus a more leverage or confrontational-based system, which is what left-wing activists did to the Democratic Party. And now you see the amount of control, power, and sway that they hold. We went with the access-based system, particularly because it pays really, really well. I'm sorry, is this on? We're just nicer. That's why we did it. But the reality is we just, as a civilization, we don't have time to have that debate any longer. It doesn't really matter what your views on that position are anymore. Pearl Harbor happened. It's time to act.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have time for pontifications. We're beyond that. The debate's irrelevant now. Act or lose, period. And greetings, back with Hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre, Todd Erzin, and all of you. Let us know what you think about what we think. Steve at stevedeace.com. That's the email address, DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. Look for Steve Deace on Parler, MeWe, and Gab as well. YouTube.com/Steve Deace or Rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. That's where you're going to find clips of the show to sample and then share with others. And also, if you're a podcast listener, we appreciate you. We would ask, though, that you would show your appreciation for us, too. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Leave us a 5-star review on whichever podcast platform you use, because the more of those that we get, the more it helps the show to grow. Pleases our overlords down there in Dallas, not to mention boost our fragile male ego. So we want to say thank you for all of the thousands of ego boosts that we have already received. Bottom of the hour, we're going to have 3 non-political questions. Theology Thursday, though, brought to you by our friends over at Raycon. Maybe you feel like you're just always looking at a screen these days, now more than ever. And whether you're an avid news watcher or in serious need of a distraction, unplugging yourself is easier said than done. I love, now that the warmer weather is here, my Saturday workout now, I go on these 5-mile walks, just catch up on podcasts and just breathe some fresh air, get out of the house for a while. Really started doing that last year to get used to the 8 to 10 miles a day of walking that was I had to look forward to when we took the kids to Disney World in the fall. And then I just realized, I like doing this. So, and that's just some great opportunities to put in the Raycon wireless earbuds, listen to something great. Who knows? Maybe get caught up on podcasts to this show. So whether it's catching up on your favorite podcast or powering through a workout with your pumped up playlist, Raycons in your ears can make all the difference. No dangling wires or stems that get in the way here. They come in a range of colors as well. Always comfortable in-ear fit for a more discreet look. I've tried several brands. This actually has the best in-ear fit that I have found. And they can be built to perform anywhere, anytime, with water, sweat-resistant construction as well. Bluetooth that pairs quickly and seamlessly, and enough battery life for 6 hours of playtime so that you can unplug for a good long while. And right now, Raycons are offering 15% off of all of their products for our listeners right here at the Steve Deace Show. And all you got to do to take advantage of those savings is go to buyraycon.com/Steve. That's RAYCON. Buyraycon.com/Steve. That's it. Buyraycon.com/Steve. You get 15% off your entire Raycon order today at buyraycon.com/Steve. So let's get to Theology Thursday. We've answered a lot of questions in this segment over the years. People with curiosities or skepticisms or challenges or questions about the integrity of the claims of Christianity. I don't know that we've ever received one like this, which is why when I saw it, I said, you know what? If we didn't try to take this one on, we'd kind of be a little gutless. So we got to do this because it's a unique challenge. Maybe some of you that do full-time ministry or evangelism, you've heard this before. I have not, though. I mean, faith matters. Well, now with COVID in the past year, it has been the number one item of feedback. It has been COVID related in the last year. But historically on our radio show, matters of faith are the number one topic we get engaged on from you and our audience. So we've gotten a lot of engagements, but I've not heard one quite like this from Ryan. He writes, I love reading about Christianity. I read apologetics. And I listen to lectures and podcasts about Christianity, but I'm not a Christian and I don't know if I ever will be. I've been an atheist forever, only got interested in Christianity in the past couple of years. Many of the old reasons for atheism are stuck to me. The idea of a creator caring about human beings in this vast, empty universe seems like wishful thinking. I might be too cynical for faith. I don't know, guys. I'm pretty cynical, guys. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty cynical, but at least that's what I feel like, Ryan says. The idea of Christianity sounds amazing, and it gives me hope. But I feel like I would only believe it because I want it to be true. I want the truth, not what I want the truth to be, and that makes Christianity seem like a scam in my gut. People tell me I'll feel something when I'm ready. Oh, no, please tell me they didn't do that. Tell me they did not do that.
They did.
Oh, my gosh. If I could just make one correction to your otherwise thoughtful note, Ryan, you should have switched the sentences around. You should have started with, people will tell me I'll feel something when I'm ready, but I haven't, and I'm beginning to doubt that I will. And then wrote, okay, I want the truth, not what I want the truth to be, and that makes Christianity seem like a scam in my gut. Because those two sentences actually belong together. I just think you might have them in the wrong order. Okay. He goes on to say something very kind. Your show is an important voice to me. Your perspective seems unflinching and brutally honest, which I appreciate. So what should I do? Before we tackle the question itself, have you guys ever heard this before? I have not. I've not received a challenge. And by the way, challenge to us is not an offensive term. We love them, actually. You know, when I got done with C-SPAN the other day, my wife was like, did they only on purpose line up the callers who disagree with them? I'm like, I hope they did. That'd be a lot more fun. Okay. So challenge to many yellow-bellied Americans today is, I'm offended that you challenged me. But we actually love challenges. So challenge to us is not a pejorative around here. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay. I've not yet, though, been challenged like this. Have you, Todd, before?
Yeah, but I've been, as you know, up to my eyeballs in liberal circles professionally.
Okay.
And while it's been a lot of bad, it hasn't been all bad. And yeah, I've had some really good faith arguments. A former colleague of mine, but somebody you all know, Reed Forgrave, sports reporter now who's gone national. But I had these kind of questions with him, and he's a man of the left.
All right, so he also just thought it's too good to be true, it basically.
Well, something along those lines, like this is, but he wouldn't say that as an insult. And it's funny. Well, maybe you have this notion that it's good to be true because the people you talk to say too good to be true things. Like you'll just get a feeling. That's my first piece of advice.
Yep.
You gotta go to some people who are just like, yeah, no, and surround yourself with them regularly, not just a one-off, but regularly, because I think a lot of the fog that you are in on this issue, it might not change you, but a lot of the nonsense objections will immediately go away.
Yeah, Hooked on a Feeling's a classic tune, bro, but it's not a hymn.
Which is also not to say that that's impossible. Steve is the first one to tell you had some kind of feeling when you rose out of that seat, and you tell me that story at the where was it?
The Promise Keepers.
Thank you. But
yeah, but the feeling I had was to actually not rise out of my seat, brother. Okay, was to remain within.
Yes.
Yeah. Aaron, you ever heard a challenge like this before?
Not really. No. It's a little different, and I do think Todd is onto something, that this is stemming from a place of the moralistic therapeutic deism place. Maybe that he's seen that version of Christianity that he's seen, where it's all about the feeling, the emotional feeling. Feelings come and they go. Of course, we know that. But I'm sure you'll get into, we're not just a bunch of Spocks over here either. So this is interesting, and I think it's a little unique, at least for me anyway.
It's a grown-up conversation.
It's a very grown-up one.
It feels like he's C.S. Lewis before his conversion asking J.R.R. Tolkien, what do you think about this, dude?
But those guys also lived like 80 years ago, and we just don't communicate like this anymore.
Exactly.
We communicate on a flaccid, shallow, emotion-based level. The idea that you would challenge me from the perspective of your position defies logic and seems too sentimental. In most of the West, in this era we live in, the claims of Christianity come across as the violation of their sentimentality, not an emboldening of it. But within the church, Ryan and others in our audience who may be thinking like him, we have had a pandemic of our own in the last few decades. And it's, in an actual pandemic, you're worried about a false positive. In a spiritual pandemic, we're concerned about false conversions. And Jesus deals with this with the parable of the seed, right? And sometimes the seed, it takes for a little while, but then the waves come, meaning trials, tribulations, challenges come, and they can't stand in the gap and wash away. Okay? They haven't taken root. They can't stand firm. And I agree, unfortunately, with you, Ryan, the atheist. There's a lot of people in American churches today that are hooked on a feeling. And they have felt bad about the bad stuff that they have done or the bad stuff that's been done to them. And they want closure. And they have mistaken that closure or some shallow form of an emotional forgiveness with a conversion, with a new life. And it's because we make a lot of emotional appeals to people in Western churches today, as opposed to making claims based on truths. The first sermon, really, in the history of the Christian church. I mean, St. Peter goes and says to the people in Jerusalem, you murdered your Messiah. He looks the throng in the eye and tells them this. You erased or attempted to erase, because you can't. We can't thwart the will of God as humans. You attempted to erase the culmination of God's redemptive plan for Israel. You did this right to their faces. And there's not like a slam and praise team accompanying the message, or there's not like a lengthy disclaimer. All right, hey, this one this week's a little tough, guys, but it's what's up next in the text, and we got to go there, so put on your big boy britches. You know what I'm saying? None of that. Dude just came to drop bombs, and he does. Many of Paul's writings are just, which is much of the New Testament outside of the Gospels, just a series of truth bombs. Words of love now, yes, but seasoned with salt, as Paul himself described them. And salt stings in a wound. Salt stings because it cleanses a wound. What I hear you saying is, this just seems too trite. And brother, you're right. It is. So let me lay on you maybe what you haven't heard from some of the podcasts and things you've consulted. They beat Jesus beyond recognition. If you've ever done any studying of the penalty of crucifixion in ancient Roman culture, what Mel Gibson got an R rating for in The Passion is probably about 25-30% of what really goes on there. It's arguably the most barbaric act of capital punishment we've ever devised as a species. And they did this in full view of the public. People came and watched. They cheered. They enjoyed it. They thought it was justified. And when they were done, they beat him some more. And they beat him some more. And they beat him some more. Again, beyond recognition. The point of a crucifixion was to cause one of the most painful deaths that we had thought of yet as humans. So the nails are driven in certain strategic places so that you will not just easily bleed out. No, they're driven into those places not just to hold you up on the wood, on the tree, but also so that they can cause the maximum amount of pain without killing you, or even maybe throwing you into shock early so that your body just shuts down and doesn't recognize the pain that is to come. The goal is for you to asphyxiate to death. You can't breathe. When you're hung on there, the effort it takes, you have to raise yourself to breathe. Virtually anybody that was executed via crucifixion was scourged first. The type of beating that Christ received. But he received one of the worst types. So you were scourged first. They basically tenderized your flesh first before they put you up there. And then you were hung there to hold your body up, but in a position also where the simple act of breathing could not be performed in most cases without you then lifting yourself up in order to get leverage to exhale or inhale. Which, of course, if you committed that act of leverage, would renew which pain? Where they put the nails in your body. You'd have to still almost feel that going through all over again, because you'd have to wiggle yourself up with those nails inside of you. You'd have to wiggle yourself up with those nails in your flesh. And again, you're already bleeding out, man. You're already scourged. You're already beaten. what were the things? Were they cat o' nine tails? What am I thinking of? What are they called? Where they had the metal rods and the metal pieces at the ends of the whips.
The cat o' nine tails.
And they would, when you were scourged with these things, they would plunge into your flesh and out would come chunks of flesh. So this had occurred even before he's hung. Every time he goes to breathe now, he has to re-experience on some level the nails again in his body because he has to leverage himself up with those nails there in order to breathe. It was a long, drawn-out death on purpose of excruciating pain. It was done in full public view, basically to scare the hell out of you. This is what happens when you cross Rome. Pun intended. Did any podcast or anything that you've listened to in the last week, perhaps, Ryan, during Holy Week, Good Friday, Easter, any of them share this information with you? Were you told this? This is what God incarnate endured for you. And then all the scorn, and then all the mockery, all the rejection. He endured all of that for you. That is the recompense, the penalty that had to be satisfied, that had to be paid. In order for Ryan, you to feel as if you even have any freedom at all to contemplate these truths. And don't just die and end up in hell forever where you belong and deserve to go regardless. As do I, as does Todd, as does Aaron, as does everyone within the sound of my voice. There's nothing trite about this. Unfortunately, we have just, for Westerners, reduced it to sloganeering in too many cases. They spit on him. They mocked him. They ridiculed him. His followers, almost all of them, deserted him. All was left with was his mother, another woman, and one apostle. The rest ran and fled. They left him for dead. This is not about a feeling, brother. It's about justice. The debt had to be paid. His final words, "It is finished," or a better translation is probably, "It is accomplished." What is finished? What is accomplished? The wrath of God on a macro level. The law was fulfilled. The wrath of God was accomplished, satisfied. And the price that had to be paid to satisfy that wrath was of such great consequence that there is no other way for you to escape the wrath of God, Ryan. Maybe, Ryan, you strike me in your email as a man. So let me bring it to you, okay? I think maybe you've contemplated this a little too intellectually at times. And maybe our own show has played into that because that's often the way that we discuss faith matters, is an intellectual application of these eternal truths. But let me bring it down to you street level. The cost of what Christ did for you was so high, so anguishing, so punishing, that there is no way for you, Ryan, or for anyone within the sound of my voice to escape an even worse fate in hell for all of eternity apart from being covered by the sacrifice Christ made for you. You cannot escape the wrath of God that you are owed and you deserve apart from what Christ already endured for you. You will receive your reward in full apart from Christ. You will suffer a far greater fate in hell for all of eternity than even the heinous fate Christ suffered for you on the cross. Minus a true appreciation, understanding, and obedience to the magnitude of that sacrifice. Have they ever put it to you like that before, Ryan? Because that's what this is really about. Justice. And you know who deserves justice first? God. Because no one has been more betrayed than he has been. None of us would exist without him. So his justice had to be satisfied first. And the cost was his own son. And not just some limp-wristed ritual, but a vile, violent, grisly, grotesque execution. That if we put a passion play on in our churches today and it accurately depicted it, they'd shut us down for obscenity. That was the cost. That was the price. Maybe that's missing from the podcasts you're listening to, the books you're reading. I know that's missing from a lot of our churches. But that was the cost. Jesus gave it all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. But without that, you will bear that stain, Ryan. You will. And whether you believe in a holy God or not is irrelevant. Gravity does not exist, Ryan, on the basis of your belief in it. Why do you have a conscience? Where did it come from? Where is your ability to reason through these propositions, Ryan, even come from? When the injured antelope lumbers out into the open of the Serengeti, does the lion stop and think, I just mauled one of these suckers and ate every last bit of meat off its bones. I'm going to let this one go. I just don't think it would be right. Wouldn't be fair. Plus, we can't, cut down too much on the antelope population. No. The instinct of the lion pounces on the injured antelope, and he mauls and he revels again, regardless of how much antelope he has already eaten. Because he's not made in the image of God, Ryan. He doesn't have a conscience. He doesn't reason. You do because you were. And for all of us within the sound of my voice, the time of wrestling with this will come to an end, and you will stand face to face with your Maker, and you will have a get out of hell free card, or you will not. Because God's justice will be satisfied. First and foremost. Now, has it ever been presented to you like that, Ryan? How many of you listening to me right now have had that presented to you? Anything close to that? Because that's the way we used to present things around here. But we don't anymore. And look what's become of us. Gentlemen, you have any thoughts before we close this out?
Yes, I would say to help you receive what Steve said, immediately apply the too good to be true logic, which is understandable, and all of us have, as Christians sometimes, to your own dogma. Because as an atheist, I assume that you ultimately, you're here, you are speaking, you are talking, you are thinking. I assume you ascribe to evolution. Well, even if you take the mathematics of how long it would take to ultimately go from nothing to something, which mathematicians have done and shown that this is statistically impossible. Even if you buy into that, the whole point of it happening is raw survival. It has nothing to do with a morality, just somebody that can survive better. Yet it's gotten to this place where surviving means no longer believing in the two genders that make that surviving, where we kill our offspring, where we don't even want to have sex anymore. We've laid that out on the show before. It's not, what you think got us to this point isn't even doing what your fundamentals say brought you to this point. So that is too good to be true. And I think you need to see that as well. And I think you're a man who can and will if he's honest about it.
This is, yesterday I saw somebody tweet, what branches of Christianity best line up with libertarianism? I think you got your priorities mixed up there, my friend.
Yeah. Or anyism, for that matter.
Anyism, exactly. This is not a matter that you can pick and choose. My wife and I are thinking about moving to a little bit bigger place before the baby comes in August. And we don't, when we go through that process, we look at some places and we're like, well, maybe that's too good to be true. That's too good to be true. I don't really like that. That's what you do as a consumer. Your soul is not your own. You don't really, at the end of the day, have a choice whether or not things are true or not. Either they are or they are not. Either they are or they are not. Christ died for all of us, the believers and the unbelievers. It is in your hands, though. It is your choice what you do with that. But you either accept it or you do not. There's no too good to be true or I don't like this. That's the gravity of the situation. It's not a consumeristic transaction.
We'll come back after that fire and brimstone. We'll just lighten up a little bit, play a game of 3 non-political questions next. We're looking for alternatives to what can we do with our kids' downtime instead of just putting them in front of a screen. Well, let me tell you about Annie's Kit Clubs. They've got the perfect subscription box for both boys and girls. So right away, you know that they still believe in those two things over there at Annie's Kit Clubs. They've got the Young Woodworkers Kit Club for the guys, a monthly subscription that puts real tools into your child's hands, including what every boy wants, the kid-sized hammer. Every month, your child's going to receive an all-in-one woodworking kit with all the materials and tools kids need to make an awesome woodworking project with minimal supervision, which is good if you're like me, okay? And you can break down the differences between Calvinism and Arminianism, but when your garage door breaks, you got to call your buddy Joe and have him come and fix it, all right? So the minimal supervision part is key, all right? I don't know, kid. You got me on that one. And for the girls, the Creative Girls Club, you get 2 fun craft projects every month, complete with easy-to-follow instructions that will kickstart her creativity through painting, beading, and more. So help your kids. Our kids, do it for the neighbor kids for a gift, your grandkids. Help our kids develop actual skills, master things that go on in the real world, or new crafting techniques that help express their creativity. It makes a great gift. Go to Annie's Kit Clubs, ANNIES, AnniesKitClubs.com/Steve. Get 75% off your first shipment at AnniesKitClubs.com/Steve. It is now time for 3 non-political questions.
We all have questions.
Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Who am I? A search and a question of identity. Why am I here? A question of meaning and purpose. Where am I going? Question of destiny.
Some better than others.
What sort of morality or proto-morality would you expect to find in a chimpanzee troop?
Injecting some levity into the demise of Western civilization. It's 3 questions on the Steve Deace Show.
Yes, 3. Hopefully, and I cannot understate that enough, hopefully good questions that I definitely did not think of within the last...
Hopefully, huh?
few minutes.
I feel like, what's that? I love those ads. Who's this former Saturday Night Live guy? The certainty ads.
Oh, yeah.
Almost surely or whatever, this parachute will work.
Oh, Tracy Morgan.
Yeah, that ad is phenomenal. You made me think about that, though, and not an entertaining way there in the last minute.
How close are we to getting to Aaron just saying, what is your Mount Rushmore of Mount Rushmores?
I think I've already done that. Yeah, I think I've already done that, unfortunately. We'll go with question number 1. If you could change the definition of any word, what would that word be, and what would you change the definition to?
You know what? Puritanical or Puritanism. That is a pet peeve of mine. Okay. And hey, I say that as a guy that I am no prude. I think I've demonstrated that on multiple occasions, often to the chagrin of a solid segment of our own audience. Okay. I am not a prude. You know, when I taught biblical worldview at the homeschool co-op here in town a few years ago, I was told the parents, nobody under the age of 15 in our class, because we're going to talk real issues about sexuality, because that's really the intersection of almost every conflict we have in our culture today. And I'm going to talk to them like they're adults. You know, they've got the equipment to make a baby. So if your baby isn't old enough yet to hear those things, don't put them in my class. Okay. So, I'm not a prude. But neither were the Puritans, by the way. Not a immaculate conception among them. And I believe they averaged about 14 kids a family. Okay. The way that we have, sharded on them, when the reality is none of y'all are sitting here in this place called these United States of America without them. This whole thing, whatever it is now, whatever it once was, whatever it was meant to be, that shining city on a hill, American exceptionalism, America love it or leave it, whatever, okay? And whatever it used to be, or we hope it can still be, or it once was and maybe again. None of that happens without the Puritans. They are, they're the engineers here. They came in. They're the species that came to the continent. They seeded the waterway with the DNA of the belief system and the value system that gave birth to all of this. And the way that we just shart on them, from using that term of their name as almost a swear word, I find it vile and it disgusts me, not to mention it's historically inaccurate. So that's the word I would change the meaning of to its actual one.
I would change conservative, and it would bring it back to address all the fundamentals of a word I haven't mentioned in a while, and I believe, but I'm really big on it, not a word, but a theory of subsidiarity, the appropriate level of government for specific tasks that, yes, are moral in their implications. And this is something that Josh Hammer has been doing great work on lately in this discussion. Before him, it goes back to the SORAB conversations, because right now, our definition of conservatism allows a guy like Asa Hutchinson in his southern drawl say, it sounds like embracing big government to me to get in there and tell you not to cut your son's balls off. They honestly think they're being conservative. So that ain't going to cut it. And if we actually believed that subsidiarity is at the heart of any functional grown-up understanding of conservatism, we would all be living our lives differently.
By the way, I've been meaning to tell you this for a couple of months, and I just forgot. Okay. So Rob reached out to me on Twitter. Pardon me, folks, little internal show business. So Rob DM'd me on Twitter a couple of months ago about a book he has coming out this spring. And I gave him your information because I knew you'd want to have him on. So.
I haven't told you, but I've already got him booked.
Oh, okay. All right. So there you go.
That was fun.
Yeah. I had completely forgotten
about
this.
Our minds are becoming one.
And I knew if his book came out later on and we didn't have him on, you'd kill me. And so I wanted to bring that up now. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. Back to the actual program.
Fine.
Okay, thanks.
The word that I would choose is cattywampus. it's askew. That means it's askew, incongruent. I would just change it to be like an exclamatory verb, like or oh or huzzah. That's what I would do.
We had like these deep, like we went to the bowels of the respective religious traditions from whence we both came, right? And he busts out with that. Yeah.
I would get rid of birds because I hate birds.
Oh, nice.
That conversation made my mother unsure if I was actually her son. She loves birds. Question number 2. What's the most emasculated you've ever seen another man in real life, in person? And then secondary to that, what's the most emasculated you've ever felt?
Oh, man. It's the most emasculated I've ever seen another guy. I can come up with my own a lot simpler than I could another one, only because this just happens on such a regular basis that I'm trying to think of one in particular. You know what? I'll choose one because the examples in our culture are rife. But in the 2000, and you're going to like this one. In the 2010 Wisconsin-Michigan football game. This is back when Bielema was coaching the Badgers. Wisconsin ran the same play and only one play the entire second half. They just flipped it from strong side to weak side depending on, which side of the hash mark they were on. Okay, so just flip the play. Like you can flip your play on Madden if you want to run it to the strong side or the weak side. Okay, they ran the same play the entire second half, over and over and over again. Ran for like 300 yards, never wavered. And if you know anything about Brett Bielema, he let us know after the game that they ran the same play the entire second half, over and over and over again. That and what Ohio State did to us in Urban's last game in 2018 is amongst the most emasculated I've ever seen other people, outside of all of the other examples that exist virtually every single day. What is the most emasculated I have ever felt was Jackson Park Junior High, the year I didn't make the basketball team, and I went out for the wrestling team. And you have to understand, wrestling's not big in Michigan like it is in Iowa, And I mean, I had the wrestling album. Remember did you ever have the wrestling album? Like where they had all the theme songs? I'm a Real American, Fight for the Rights of Every Man, Hulk Hogan's theme. You never had that album?
No.
Oh, me and Todd Zylstra, man, used to like come out. He had a pool in his backyard with a deck. We used to take turns going Jimmy Superfly Snuka off the top rail, which drove his mom nuts, thinking we were going to fall down and break our necks with the elbow drops, like he did Don Morocco in WrestleMania off the top of the steel cage. Okay, people are losing their minds over the fact that how much of this minutia I know.
I love a good Don Morocco reference.
Yes, but I thought that's what wrestling was, right? And so me and this other guy named Brad, I think the other guy's name was Brad. We're the last two cuts in the basketball team.
Please, God, tell me that Steve gets suspended from school for a camel clutch violation, please.
No, it's a lot worse than that. And so Brad and I think the other kid's name was Brad. We were the last two cuts in the basketball team. We go into the wrestling room, and we thought, hey, this would be cool. We're only 12 years old. So like guys are warming up and we're like, why are they wearing like water polo helmets? And what is with these really short uniforms they have on, And like we're doing like Irish whips and figure four leg locks. Okay. And because we think this is what wrestling is. And they get in there and start doing bear crawls. And I mean, it was humiliating. I was a late puberty bloomer. And so the singlet did not, bulge in the places it was supposed to, but unfortunately bulged in some places it was not. I won one match, and it's because there was some outbreak. I don't remember now if it was flu or measles or something at Sparta Middle School. And they didn't have anybody to wrestle my weight, which was like 117 or 120 or something. And so I won by forfeit, and that was my only win. Every other match I got pinned. One match I got pinned in a minute. Yeah, that was so humiliating. It's the only thing Dave ever let me quit, ever. He's like, you want to quit, don't you? And I wasn't sure if I was being challenged, right? Because if Dave said you wanted to quit, you were supposed, nope, never, right? This was the one time I was like, yeah. And I thought, I'll take whatever's coming my way for punking out. I've got to be honest. And he looked at me and said, it's really embarrassing the hell out of us. Go ahead and quit. All right, that's the most emasculated I've ever been. Okay, Jackson Park Junior High, 1986. Not that I'm still scarred by it or anything. I remembered it in great detail. Yes.
The first time you as a grown man, which learn how to use a gun, that's emasculating because a dude he knows something that you should know as an adult, and you know, I don't know how to load it, how to touch it. It feels, at least for me, the first time I did, it feels like you're grabbing a live grenade. You just know the power of the weapon. And at the end of the day, it's just a tool like anything else, like your lawnmower or whatever. But until then, so that's an emasculating feeling. There was once this refereeing a soccer game. And I agree.
I find soccer
not
also
that.
emasculating.
I know that was
finally.
I walked right into that.
It's a breakthrough. Stepped on a rake there, Todd.
But I used to umpire professional baseball. I got into reffing soccer because I made my daughters referee soccer because they needed to learn that side of it and not just be ripping on people, which wasn't their prone to. But this is what people end up doing. They think they know everything about something they know nothing about. So, but then I would ref with them and I would show them the ropes. Well, there was one time, this one dad coach on a rec team, it wasn't like typical thing. It was silly. And he said something that was so ridiculous to me. My daughter was standing right there and she was like 14 at the time. And she didn't do it on purpose. She giggled right in his face because it was so preposterous.
Oh,
and I was like, see? Yeah. Like, truth right there. Yeah.
All right, before we get to the third question, let me tell you about realestateagentsitrust.com, because trying to sell your home in any market, any economic environment can be challenging, but especially in these unprecedented times.
Bing.
Thank you. Oh, we got it in stereo this time. I liked it. All right. You want to make sure you can find an agent that will come in and take charge of the situation, but remembers who's ultimately in charge of the situation. That's you. They can be trusted. They've got a fully vetted track record of success. Where would you find such an agent? Well, the good news is the name kind of says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com. That's where you're going to find the kind of agents that you're looking for just about anywhere in the country. And often they come from within our own audience. All right. We can help find an agent that will finally deliver for you the results you're looking for during what can be one of the more stressful things you'll ever try to do, real estate. All right. realestateagentsitrust.com. That's the name. That's all you got to remember. Go to that website. realestateagentsitrust.com.
For me, the most emasculated I've ever seen, another dude in person. It's got to be on the football field at practice one time. One of the upperclassmen decided at the end of the year during our fun conditioning activity corners, with the big tackling dummies that you carry across and you try to meet in the middle and hit each other. One of the upperclassmen decided to pick on one of the freshmen, one of the scrawniest kids on the team, and just completely lit him up in the middle of the field just because he thought it was fun. Also happens that was the most emasculated I've ever been.
I need to change.
I thought there was going to be a punchline. I was waiting for it.
You got me thinking. I got to change my answer to David French saying drag queen story as the price of freedom. That's the most emasculated.
Thank you. All right, this has to be rapid fire.
Number 3, what's the most controversial opinion on food that you possess?
Probably people get offended when I point out on Thanksgiving. My mom is even disgusted by this. I just would rather have stovetop stuffing than the homemade stuff where you throw the oysters, and eye of newt and wing of bat and all that other stuff. Just, I'm a terrible, ugly American. Just give me the stovetop out of the box. People lose their minds when I have that take.
Apparently that hot dogs aren't a sandwich. Because that's like...
I don't even know where this debate... Where did that debate even come from?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Stop.
I maintain that Reese's are candies. They are not candy bars.
Oh, that... Oh, God. I had forgotten about that one. Good Lord.
All right, we're going to stick around and do the overtime for our Blaze TV subscribers. For the rest of you, we will see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck here on Blaze TV. Until then, John 3:17.